That's a perfect segue to 2010. I think this is the most famous of matches on home soil. 2010
Yeah.
World Cricket League Division 5 in Nepal, the final match of the group stage when USA, Singapore, and Nepal were all fighting for top two spots. USA restricts Nepal to 162 for 9 in that game. And by this point, you had become captain of Nepal. Like you said, Sushil Nadkarni, 57 not out in the chase. Sushil Nadkarni, do we blame him for sparking the riot? Who is most responsible for the events that unfolded that day?
It was pretty crazy back then if you talk about Nepal cricket, because we used to have a lot of these people who come in at the ground, just be wild and screaming and shouting Nepal and cheering us up. And I remember that game when we got 163 odd runs. We believed that at that stage, if we got anything above 150 with our spin bowling attack, we felt that we could beat anyone. But getting 150 itself was such a hard task. Then it was about getting those 120s and 30s and scrambling across. So when we got 163 odd runs, we at the innings break thought that we had enough. And we knew that the ball's going to turn because it was second innings and you had Sanjam and Basant and Shakti and Rahul, all these guys who played a pivotal role in helping Nepal, win over the last 4 matches. And world cricket was such that you lose one game, it came down to says all three teams were tied at equal points, and we had to somehow win the game. Then this partnership between Sushil Nadkarni, where we brought in Sanjam Regmi from one end at the shorter side of the TU grounds at one of the side pitches where the match was held. He kept peppering him and the left-right hand combination with himself and Aditya made us, think a lot. At least made me think, because it came down to a fact that we tried to protect one side of the small ground, but that would mean that if we bring in a left-hander, it would mean a shorter side for the right-hand batsman and vice versa. So that way they rotated very nicely. Sushil was very, very clinical. He was very clear of the fact that US had to chase the score in this amount of overs. And we went into the game thinking that even if we lost, we'd still make it. But midway down the game, I think around when the partnership started building, we got this information that if we don't restrict them under certain overs, it would mean that we would be eliminated. And I'm sure the word flew around the Tribhuvan University ground, and all people thought, if Nepal can't win today, we will not let anybody win. And it is more of a fashion statement then. It's bad to use the term fashion statement, but people would just enjoy just picking up a stone or something on those grass patches and mud patches. It wasn't stone, but it was those grass patches, which is very hard. And they used to throw it at the ground, throw at us. And all of a sudden, when they started smashing us, and there's what around, I don't remember the exact amount of runs that was left, around 12, 13 runs. Everyone had to fly out. Why? Because there were lots of hurdles of stones and pebbles coming across our way, bottles of water being thrown at us, and it was just riots. I'm sure the Nepalese cricket fans must have seen this in 1996 when India was playing Sri Lanka in the semi-finals at Eden Gardens, where India could not win that game and they were struggling. The whole of Eden Gardens was lit up and the fans were throwing bottles and the match had to be abandoned and Sri Lanka qualified for the finals. So all these things must have subconsciously hit our Nepalese fan base then, where they thought that if the team doesn't win, we should throw stones or just disrupt things the way they want. But Destiny had other things in mind. The game got stopped and there's a lot of Duckworth and Lewis and permutations and combinations. And if the game had not been stopped, we would not have qualified. Why? Because at that point of time, we were behind the net run rate. And because the game stopped and with the cricket and Duckworth Lewis rules that we have, it came down to the fact that the over rates had to be reduced. The target also had to be managed because we had lost around a period of 45 minutes to 1 hour time. And it was late in the afternoon. It was month of February. So that way, it was almost like peak winter season. And then when the game resumed after putting in a lot of security protocol, we went in and I think one thing that US did not do then was they could have just come and hit and completed those 11, 12 runs that was there. But even for them, it came, I'm sure it came as a big shock. Why? Because They'd never experienced that before. Even for myself, I'd never experienced that before, having played for 5-6 years at junior level, senior levels, never seen that. So, and even for the batters, they kept on knocking, and we managed to somehow squeeze in 5-6 overs for those limited 12-13 runs. And next thing you know, I remember who was the ICC media officer, Lucy Benjamin, who I think she's worked with ICC for a great number of years. She came and said that you guys have qualified. Everyone inside the dressing room is like, did we? And they're like, yes. Then what's the margin like? It's like, it was a matter of a ball. One ball. If that pelting of the stones had happened a couple of balls later, one ball later, it would have meant that Nepal would not have made it, even if it came down to Duckworth and Lewis. So that's how the whole dramatic story goes.
On a previous episode of the podcast, I asked then USA Cricket Association CEO Don Lockerbie about this whole incident. I've talked with other USA players over the years, get their recollections of the event, and they talk about how it was just chaos and mayhem, and they didn't know what was going on. And some players were told who were in the dugout, stay in the dugout, stay in your dressing room, while Sushil and Aditya in the middle were basically told stay out in the middle because people aren't going to be able to throw objects that far to harm you. So the safest place is actually stay out there, because if you try and go from the field to the locker rooms, that's where the issue is. That's where the biggest threat is, to get from one point A to point B. I've heard about it from the USA perspective. From your perspective, as the home captain in your home country, your home field, did you feel threatened at all?
We felt scared for sure. Why? Because imagine somebody throwing stones at you, right? You'd be scared if it hit you, you'd get injured. And just the shock of it. Why? Because we knew the crowd would be rowdy, but we did not expect it to go that bad, where the game had to be completely disrupted. We knew that maybe if somebody was filling down the boundary line, you'd be peppered, saying, with words or maybe a bit of banter here and there. But when it came down from all sides of the ground, we had I was there at short covers. I was like, what's happening? All of a sudden, you had these hurdles of stone and what bottles coming into the ground, and the players from deep fine and deep square had to run in. We went into a huddle. Then all of a sudden they're still throwing stone. The police had to go intervene, and there was chaos all over at the crowd section. Inside, we had no idea what to do. We were thinking I think we should get inside. Why? Because it was safety first for us as well. But I remember, like you said, Sushil and Aditya, they wanted to stay in. Why? Because they knew that they had to win. It's as simple as that, because without winning, they would not qualify. And they had to get it in that time frame of 31 point something, whatever the Duckworth Lewis target was then. So they kept on peppering, and they're stationed at the middle of the pitch. We were there outside of the ground. Then we were told by the security that the best thing would be for us to get out of the ground. And I think we were the first ones who came out, Sushil and Aditya, maybe. I don't know, I could be wrong, but they came out later. It is more of safety. We just feared for our own safety then as a cricket team.
But did you feel like, again, they were throwing stones at you as the Nepal captain, being angry that Nepal was about to lose, or more that they were throwing it at USA players?
They were actually very disappointed in us. It was to us, not to US players. Why? Because they're more disappointed with the fact that we're about to lose.
Interestingly enough, after the match ends, you got to come out to the same place 24 hours later and play another match in front of an even bigger crowd. Actually, now Paul had qualified at this point. Nepal and USA go up. They're playing in the first place match, but still, by and large, it's the same fans in the same situation, and an even bigger crowd, because the match that took place a day later, I think it went from being a Friday to a Saturday, so it was a weekend. So you had from 15,000, they had expanded it to 20,000 people crammed in like sardines on that day. Nepal holds USA to 172. And for people who remember Mahbub Alam being somebody who took 10 wickets, world record setting 10 wickets, one of the maybe forgotten performances and all the illustrious stories of spin bowlers over the years for Nepal, Rahul Vishwakarma, 7 for 15 to bowl USA out. And he had a very interesting line of attack, and I want to ask you about this. He was bowling to the right-handers, left arm over the wicket. He was basically pitching the ball into the footmarks well outside leg stump. Instead of trying to pat him away or block the ball away, bowling this negative line, USA kept on taking him on, hitting against the spin, trying to sweep, trying to pull. And that there were a lot of top edges that were created for those wickets. So I'm curious, what was the strategy, if you remember it, that went into that successful method to help you bowl USA out for 172 and win that match chasing?
We had Shakti and Basant, both regular left arm orthodox. So Shakti was somebody who just come in and hit one spot day in, day out. And Basant was bowling around the wicket, hitting that good length area. And Rahul was someone who was actually struggling because he wasn't as consistent. But I had seen Rahul since my under 19 days because he had played under 19 cricket with me. And I knew that he had potential. And on that particular day, because we had two bowlers bowling around the wicket, both left-handers, we just thought that maybe if we really want to maximize the rough in the TU cricket pitch, why not change that angle where you'd make them think differently? Why? Because that strategy had not been used before. And just because we had lost the match one day, 24 hours earlier, we had to somehow make a plan as to if we are to throw in an element of surprise, it had to be with Rahul. Why? Because he wouldn't be talked about at that point of why, because he was a very young member of the national team. So Shakti and Basant, because they're doing very well, they had been looked into. So for us, it was about throwing in that a bit of surprise through Rahul.
And it succeeded with the 7 wickets for 15. And Shakti Gauchan and Basan Regmi didn't take any wickets that day, none for 31, none for 37. You bowl out USA for 172, but then you're cruising in the chase. Mahesh Chetri and Anil Mandal reach 85 for none. And then all of a sudden, the clump of wickets start falling. You lose 4 wickets for 42. Shakti gets out. Shakti at that point was really a true all-rounder. He batted at number 3. You came in at number 4. Sharad Vasakar at number 5. You all get out in pretty quick succession. And I could sense the crowd starting to get a little bit anxious, and the riot police, which had been there the day before, they started to line the boundary again. And there was this feeling that, here we go again. Is it going to happen again? Did that go through your mind at all?
No, I think we'd been told that they would increase the security personnel. So because of what had happened, Cricket Association of Nepal made sure that they put in a lot of security people around the boundary line, as well as a lot of security inside the crowd section as well, so that you know now that people had to understand that this is not possible. And also the message was made loud and clear that if something like that was repeated, it would mean that Nepal would no longer get international cricket. It was all over the news, be over the radio, over TV, saying that this is how the crowd reacted. The world is now looking at Nepal, and generally Nepal's known for its hospitality. We are generous, we are kind people, we accept a lot of tourists, and we are very warm and hospitable. But the thing is that that incident, I'm sure, changed a lot of perception, where for cricket fans, if they started throwing stones, it would mean that they would not get to see the international cricket at their home ground. So that, with the addition of extra security, made sure that nobody threw stones at us. But like you said, those quick 4 wickets, and then I was in the dressing room and just looking around saying, we got this game, I hope nobody messes it. And eventually we chased it down and won our first ever senior level championship.